listening to the Straight to Video podcast with Rob Lane.
How's it going? Welcome to the Straight to Video podcast. I really hope you're doing good and everyone is safe and healthy. And as always, I really appreciate you tuning in and listening. On today's show, I was super excited to speak to Noelle LeBlanc, who some of you may know as the singer of the power pop hard rock band Damone from the early 2000s. Damone were one of those super cool bands who I fell in love with during that weird time when I was struggling to find new bands with a great melodic hard rock sound but also having a cool modern edge. Not many bands were able to pull it off, but this bunch, along with bands like All American Rejects, Butch Walker, Bowling for Soup, American Hi-Fi, they all keep me excited about music. The Damone album Out Here All Night from 2006 is, in my opinion, pretty darn essential if you like great rock tunes, and I regularly find myself revisiting it. It still sounds great. And the band got to tour the US and internationally, and they made it to the UK too, where some of you might have seen them supporting the Wild Arts, and they also made an appearance at Download Festival. But unfortunately, not long after releasing their third album, Roll the Dice, Damone split. And then this was followed by some tragic news a couple of years later when their drummer Dustin sadly passed away, which was super shocking to hear about. Following the band's split though, Noelle has stayed incredibly busy and productive both with solo work and also with her bands The Organ Beats and Swivel. In 2017 she teamed up with her old friends Waltham for an amazing song called Summer Nights, which we talk about in this chat, and if you're a fan of all the popular synthwave music then be sure to give this song a listen because I'm sure you're going to love that one. More recently though, there's been activity in the Damone camp with a reunion show last summer and also some new recordings, which is great news. For me, Damone are a band I would love to see back out there recording, releasing and touring. I think they've still got a lot to say, so I'm really excited to see what happens next once things get back to normal in this crazy world. Hope you enjoy this chat with Noelle and hopefully check out either the old Damone tunes or some of their other work, as there's some really cool music. If you want to find out more info online, then hit up damonetheband.com. theorganbeatsmusic.com, or if you want to check out Noelle's solo tunes, then you can find everything at The Last Noelle on bandcamp.com. So thanks once again for listening to the Straight to Video podcast. I hope you enjoy my chat with Noelle LeBlanc of Damone. Were you born and raised on the East Coast, kind of in the Massachusetts area?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. My father is from Moncton, New Brunswick, Canada, so French Canadian. I know he went to Vietnam, so he moved here and then got drafted. And then I guess when he came home, he met my mother. She was a bit younger than him. A lot of Canadians moved to Waltham, which is right outside of Boston.
Why was that? Do you know? Is it just kind of somewhere like a hub for businesses and work?
Yeah, actually, it was. It's still pretty industrious. There was a company, Mica, which was some sort of manufacturing, and then there's the watch factory that was in the Industrial Revolution. They made Waltham watches, which are pretty.
All right, cool.
When we were in China, Vasquez actually found a Waltham watch in one of those antique malls.
It's holy crap! Come and look at this.
Yeah. Yeah, they're all over the world though.
Right.
So we're famous for watches.
That's cool. So for those, particularly us in the UK, what was it like in your town? Because that's kind of like all the New England area, is that right? Is my geography kind of in the ballpark?
Yeah.
Because in my head, that's all really picturesque, but you said it's quite a business industrially kind of area? Is it kind of a mix of the two?
It is, yeah. Like Boston is very old architecture, very similar to like London, like,
Yeah.
but there's a lot of surrounding cities that are pretty industrious, like Waltham, Watertown. But then right outside of that, it's like really, really picturesque. Like there's the coast with like Cape Cod and the islands, and if you go further west, it's like apple picking country,
Yeah.
and pretty trees and foliage and everything in the fall.
Was that somewhere nice to grow up?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We moved to Waltham when I was like 9, which is it's 7 miles from Boston. So it's like cool to grow up like in a urban sort of area with like lots of people instead of out in the country with nothing to do. But you're close enough. Like Boston or New England's pretty small, so you can go to Maine, New Hampshire, New York, Connecticut. Like everything's pretty close.
So you can do all like the weekend break, go somewhere totally different.
Yeah, and there's water everywhere, which is great. I love being on the water.
Was you always into music as a kid, or did you have other interests, or was music the main focus pretty early on?
I was thinking about it earlier. Like it was never something I was like seeking. My mother put us in like sports, and she got me to play piano, and then I got a guitar when my brother started playing drums. So it was just kind of like hobby stuff, and we were just bored kids, whatever. But a neighbor in Waltham was just like, we moved in, and I was pretty young. I was like 12, and Adam Rourke, who started Damone with me, he like taught me how to record because he knew I played guitar, and he was like, oh, it's like, he showed me his studio and got me interested in recording. And I was just kind of like this aloof kid, like, I just go with the flow. So he kind of just like took me under his wing, and so it wasn't necessarily a dream of mine. It just kind of like happened. Which I'm grateful for. Like,
how old was you when you got into like recording? That's kind of something people do later on once they've been playing music for a while. Did you kind of do two things at once?
Yeah. So I was playing guitar, and then I got a 4-track and started writing songs. So it kind of all happened at once when I was like 13-ish.
Yeah.
Like I picked up guitar at 11, got a 4-track when I was like 13 or 14, and then started writing songs.
Sweet. Did it come pretty natural, songwriting?
I loved writing like poetry. I loved like putting cool words together. And the funny thing is, the first song that I wrote like a melody to was it wasn't my lyrics. It was that poem, "Sitting Here Brokenhearted, Tried to Shiv but Only Farted." It's just a silly, like dirty limerick, and I like put guitar and melody to it. When I showed Adam, he was like, "Oh, you can sing," and that's kind of how it started with like recording Dave Pino's pop songs, which he was the primary writer originally for Damone.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I wrote my own songs, but they were not as good.
How did all you guys meet then?
Well, Adam went to school with like Dave and Frank from the Pino Brothers.
Mm-hmm.
They had the band Waltham the band. And I was a bit younger, but like when I'm like Adam, just like when he picked me, I would say took me under his wing. We just became friends, like bike riding in the neighborhood. And then so he knew Dave growing up when they were growing up together. So I would just like, I'm just this little kid like hanging out in the studio, like wrapping mic cables, and they would be recording like Waltham the band stuff, and they're like, "Who's this young chick over in the corner?"
So have you always made music with your brother Danny? Because you've got the band The Organ Beats together. You say he played drums. Was you two always kind of joined together music wise, or was that something that came on later in the day?
Well, we definitely started playing together. Like when he took up drums, I took up guitar, and like so we would just like bash our instruments loudly in the basement, not making any sense. Or we called ourselves the Boomerangs. So that was like the first band, but it was just noise.
Was you like the White Stripes before the White Stripes?
Yeah, I guess we were. Yeah. So we started playing together, and then we had a garage band with just like a group of my brother's like skateboarder friends, and I think we were called the Fuck Muffins from Mars.
That's a great name. Make a great t-shirt.
Well, we never had a name, and we were just jamming in the garage like super loud, and the cops came. They were really nice, but they're like, "So what's the name of the band?" And Al was like the goth kid, and he was like, "Fuck Muffins from Mars," and like. I was like, whoa, that's brilliant. So yeah, and then years later, I was like taking the organ beats more seriously, and that's when I asked Danny to play, if he wanted to play drums and like start like a real live band.
Is Danny older or younger than you?
He's 2 years older.
Yeah. What kind of music was he listening to back in the day?
Before I met Adam and got like a more mature taste of music, Danny and I listened to like Korn and Limp Bizkit and that kind of stuff, which was like hot at the time. But yeah, he was, we both did not have very good taste in music. Yeah, I guess he got me into like Violent Femmes and trying to think of another cool band. But yeah, he influenced me a bit, like, because I would just tag along with him and his skater friends, and whatever they were listening to, I was like, oh, cool. Or Radiohead was a one I had the Bends on cassette that I would like fall asleep to.
Great album.
Yeah, so good.
Because the Boston area itself, that's home to some amazing bands. I was just looking, I mean, I'm a hard rock fan, so obviously you've got like Aerosmith, and I was big into the band Extreme. The list is crazy. You've got the Cars, the Pixies, Lemonheads, New Kids on the Block, all these kind of bands from Boston. It's such a great cross-section of music. So did you take all that in, or was it just always on the radio, that kind of stuff? Because you have like the Boston Music Awards and all that kind of thing as well, right?
Well, Aerosmith practiced, they had a space in Waltham. Like I knew, but I mean like way before I sort of lived there, but that was always pretty cool to know about. And there was actually, so Damone's current drummer, Luke Mangini, his uncle is Mike Mangini.
Mike Mangini, right. That just fell into place there.
Yeah.
From Extreme, right?
Yeah, he played in Extreme.
A while ago.
Yeah, and now Dream Theater. And then there's New Kids, the Wahlbergs have like Wahlburgers. It's pretty funny. And we played the BMAs, or we were like nominated one year, and one of the New Kids was like hosting. I forget what it wasn't the Wahlberg. Which one? I can't remember.
I could probably reel them off and like really embarrass myself or something like that.
It's embarrassing that I don't know.
That must have been insane when they were at the top of their game back in like whenever it was, like 89 or something like that. That must have been insane around that area.
I was too young. I don't think we were still living a little bit further on the outskirts. And I was like, I don't want to say how old I was because that will show my age. I was alive, but I wasn't old enough to be conscious.
The hysteria behind bands like when they get as big as that must have been mad, especially if a lot of them are from that area as well. It must be crazy.
Yeah, I know. I wish I was there for that.
Because there's a lot of power pop as well from Boston as well, which I'm guessing Damone kind of went in similar circles to. I don't know if you ever crossed paths with American Hi-Fi or Letters to Cleo were from that kind of area as well, I think. So was that any kind of music you was listening to?
Oh, yeah. Letters to Cleo was I loved. Go was like... Oh my God, I loved that record so much. I played it on repeat for like 2 years. But I might have met Kay Hanley one time, like backstage at a festival in Boston. Mm-hmm. I vaguely remember something like that happening. But yeah, I was a lot younger, so I wasn't socially, I mean, I'm still pretty socially inept, but like... You know, I was probably too awkward for people to talk to me or me to talk to people. You know what I mean?
So where did labels start getting interested in Damone? Was it RCA who first picked you guys up? Was it a fairly fast transition from when the band first got together?
So Adam and I recorded the album over the course of like 3 or 4 years on like a reel-to-reel tape machine in his basement. So once we started getting the band, a live band together, we got Vasquez moved up from back home from Florida. He was living down there. Dave played in the band for a little bit we had Pat, a dude named Pat first. But yeah, anyway, so we finally got the band together. There's like Artemis and Roadrunner, a bunch of like smaller labels would come to the basement and like watch us play and take us out to lunch or whatever.
Had you been gigging much at that point to gain the interest? What was it that kind of caused the buzz, do you think?
We played like churches, you know, like church basements and stuff like that, VFW halls, whatever. Nothing big. It was Galley Management, Pete Galley. He was our manager. He managed Waltham, the band. So he knew Dave. So Dave got him involved, and he went to Berkeley for management. He worked with Blue. I don't know if you know Blue.
There was a boy band in the UK called Blue,
Oh.
but I know it's not that one. This whole interview is going like boy band kind of pop direction.
I'm so glad there are still boy bands because I watched the VMAs and or CNCO. Oh my God, they're so cute. And then the Asian boy band BTS. Yes, obviously. They're so good. Anyway, so Gally got interested in us and he knew a bunch of labels, got them to like court us, whatever you call it. I think at that time Adam like left the band and then we got Dustin on drums and we started rehearsing in my parents' attic. So we moved up to the attic and that's where From the Attic came from, the first album. And so RCA came. It was Brian Maloof. He was this like fancy, long trench coat, like a beret and a mustache, showed up in a limo. He was like on the phone with Sum 41 when he pulled up. He was like, excuse me, I gotta take this. And we're like, ooh. And so he came and took us out to the fanciest Italian restaurant. And he's, he was like, come to New York, we'll sign a deal. And we're like, okay.
It almost sounds crazy these days, like how the music industry's changed. It almost sounds like fairy tale in a way.
Right? I know. I feel guilty for like having spent their last, $1 million or whatever. I feel like we were on the very end.
Took it. Who were you kind of listening to and looking up to at that point as a singer, musician? Did you have any role models or anything like that?
It sounds so cliche, but I loved Weezer, Foo Fighters, Green Day, that kind of stuff. I would play along to Dookie and like sing along Garbage. I love Shirley Manson and Dinosaur Jr., the Pumpkins, the typical like 90s rock stuff, Breeders, Pixies. So yeah, I guess I think Dinosaur Jr. was the biggest for me.
Right.
I know it's weird, but something about them.
Who got you into them? Was they big just on like MTV and stuff like that? Or was you finding that out from friends? Or
probably Adam, definitely. He was like...
He was pretty plugged into stuff.
Yeah. He was a huge influence. Like what he said was God, you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's always nice to have somebody who you kind of respect.
Yeah.
Who can find these new bands which you'd never hear of otherwise. It's great when you've got somebody like that.
Yeah, he had a vibe, he was like all about vibe and that like we jived really well together and just loved like when he listened to stuff, he was like really excited, and it would get, get me pumped up because kind of need that sometimes.
So did your passion for music mean kind of, because you were pretty young, was it kind of a trade-off against perhaps a lot of things your friends were doing at that time growing up? Like, was you missing out on anything or did that not even bother you? Like, I'm into the music, this is what I'm doing.
I didn't have too many friends, so it didn't affect me terribly. Definitely beat going to school. I was on a flight to China. Our first tour was in China, and I was like basically being homeschooled by Frank's wife, Karen. She like tutored me. So I didn't have to go to school, but I had like, I had to do book reports and that kind of thing. So I was reading George Orwell's 1984 on the flight to China.
Yeah.
So that was like the extent of my schoolwork.
Did that seem normal to you back then? Or was it just, did you realize this is pretty freaking unusual that I'm doing this at this age?
It didn't really sink in. It wasn't like weird or cool or, I'm sure it was, I just have a terrible memory, but like, I'm sure it was pretty exciting. I think I had like anxiety, as much as I hate to admit it. So I was probably more like terrified than anything. But yeah, no, I had a couple of good friends and we still remain close. So I didn't feel like I missed out on anything. I wasn't worried about not going to school either. I mean,
no.
Now I wish I kind of had applied myself more, but what you can do.
When we spoke briefly prior to this chat, you mentioned you were into horror movies and stuff. I saw you posted the trailer for the Terrifier film, which not many people I know actually know about. Was that something you've always liked when you was young?
No, I was terrified. Like the Michael Jackson Thriller video like scared the bejeebus out of me. Like I couldn't watch horror movies since then. And then just like 10 years ago, I've always been like a movie junkie, but more recently I've just gotten into like gore and just like horror movies. But the thing about Terrifier is that like it scratches all those itches. Like it's the creepy clown serial killer that like just friggin' murders people like ruthlessly in the most gory, fucked up ways. But it's funny too. It's just fun and campy, but really well done. And the practical effects are great, you know.
What other films are you fans of? Do you go, so you've got into it fairly recently, like you say, in the last 10 years or so. You've obviously got this huge catalogue of films to dive back into.
Well, having started recently, I love the newer ones. Like when Conjuring came out, I was like obsessed. I watched it so many times. Obviously, like Cabin in the Woods, and the Evil Dead remake is amazing.
Yeah.
The new It. I don't know if it qualifies, but like the Color Out of Space and the Mandy.
See, I've not seen either of those two yet. They're on the list.
They're not really horror, but they're just beautiful. They're amazing.
Yeah. How does old stuff hold up watching it nowadays, first times?
I've been on like a binge of like old stuff because I've watched literally everything on Netflix. And so now in the past few years, just like watching all the old stuff and rewatching the classics, obviously. And I recently watched Bad Taste, the Peter Jackson, and I was like, how the hell have I never seen this before? And it's just so funny. You could see his craft is just already honed even back then.
Have you tried Brain Dead?
Yes. So
That's insane.
It's now Dead Alive, right? Actually, for my birthday, we had like a quarantine party and watched it on the projector outside.
Nice.
And I was like, I don't think I've seen this, but I realized that I had seen like half of it at some point. But yeah, so those are great. I love all the 80s like campy horror movies. They're so fun. Yeah. I can't even name them. There's so many. It's like unlimited.
Yeah. Have you got the Shudder channel, like the horror equivalent of Netflix?
Yeah, my boyfriend has that. I don't have it yet, but I just use it.
There's like a 4.5 hour documentary just going through every film of the 80s pretty much on there. It's insane. It just breaks them down, goes from 80 to 81, 82 all the way through, and just breaks down pretty much every horror film from the decade. It's insane.
Oh, I gotta watch that.
Shit, not seen that one.
Oh, that's awesome. I gotta check it out.
Because even like some of your videos from the past, the Damone video for Out Here All Night has a very...
Evil Dead. That was the inspiration.
And is there an Organ Beats one? Is it Golden Heart, which has kind of supernatural elements to it and stuff?
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Is that your influence, or was that coming from somewhere else?
Yeah, Evil Dead, the Damone Out Here All Night was like me and Dustin... he actually got me into a lot of pop culture stuff, but like comic books and at least the Evil Dead. I know we would watch that at the apartment, but the Organ Beats. So we had our friend Mike Boylan directed it, and we went out to New Jersey. In his neighborhood, there's like the building we shot it in was like a historical building, and I guess it's known to be haunted, and it definitely felt haunted.
Oh, let's throw a Ouija board in it at the same time.
Yeah, I think it was the director's idea. I might have brought the like face masks, but yeah, I believe that was like the director who came up with that. But it worked out. Cool. I liked it.
So we've got Halloween just around the corner. Was that something you liked to do growing up? Was you into that?
Oh yeah. I mean, who isn't? That is candy, dressing up, walking around outside in sweatshirt weather. Yeah, it's the best.
How was that in your area? Because that's, again, my geography might be screwed up, but isn't like all the Salem area around there, is that kind of big during the Halloween season? Do they kind of play off that?
Oh, yeah.
Or is it kind of sacred ground, not you shouldn't cash in on the commercial element, or do they just go to town with it?
Oh, they go to town. It's only like... I would say like 40 minutes north of me, and you can't even move. Like if you drive down up there, like there's so many people on the streets. Like they shut down like a whole block.
Yeah.
You know, there's like the brick sidewalk and sort of like a, what do you call that? Outdoor mall with like spiritual shops and like tarot card readings. And yeah, it's packed. Unfortunately, this year probably won't be, but
who knows what's going to happen. Yeah.
I know.
It'd be a bit quieter.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Which might be nice. It might be worth going this year because you can move.
So you teamed up again with Dave Pino for the new Waltham song, Summer Nights. Well, I say new, recent Waltham song, Summer Nights. How did all that come about? Have you guys constantly stayed in touch, even though he wasn't in Damone anymore?
Yeah, it was more his brother Frank, the singer of Waltham, the band. Well, Dave kind of like moves around a lot. He's always like touring, or he lived in LA for a while and now he lives in Texas, and he's back and forth a lot. Yeah, we remained friends, and like Frank and I are really close. Like I'm kind of like an auxiliary member.
Right, okay.
So there's a couple of us that like either fill in, or we just pop up for a song when they're playing. So they had Summer Nights a couple years ago, and I think I was just like hanging around. He's like, "Oh, do you want to sing this part?" And I was like, "Yeah, totally." So they got puppets and made a video. They went to a Corey Feldman show, and they like Corey was like singing to the puppets, and like the video is amazing. If
I was going to ask about that. Was Feldman aware of that going to happen, or was it kind of guerrilla filmmaking and they just died like, let's cash in on getting in this show and try and make a video?
Yeah, they just kind of showed up, and the funny thing is, I don't think Corey realized like what was happening. Even though it was like a tiny little club, I don't think he realized that they were puppets. But you know, you're on stage, you can't really tell what's going on.
It's a great video, it really is. For those people listening who's not seen it, it's kind of like there's like a Jim Henson Muppet version of yourself at the club where Corey Feldman's playing. So yeah, I just wondered if it was like just some clever guerrilla filmmaking, because I know Feldman's a bit of a interesting guy from what I can tell. He's quite a character, so I didn't know if he was in on the whole thing or not.
Yeah, no, he was not. But they all met him. Like Karen, Frank's wife, said she was like crying because she's like in love with him, and she was just like obsessed. And he was super nice to her and everybody. And he's a little out there, but I think he's got a really good heart. You know what I mean? Yeah.
I was a massive fan of him during the 80s. I mean, Lost Boys and License to Drive are two of my all-time favorite films.
Every Corey movie is like my favorite.
So you've stayed nice and productive since Damone kind of disbanded around, was it like 2008?
Yes, yeah,
kind of time, both with your solo material, organ beats, and is there a band called Swivel as well? Did I see?
Yeah, that's we started that like, man, so 60, 70, yeah, like 4 years ago.
Right.
It's like kind of a super group, like Ken Susi of Unearth, and I started it. And like Carissa Johnson she's a solo artist from around here and does really well. I think she went out to the UK like last summer. And then Pat Politano is the drummer, and he was in a band called Letter Day who did some touring around here. So yeah, it's kind of like a off and on thing. Of course, right now, like we had a show booked like literally the day the shutdown occurred over here. And so as far as music goes, like on all fronts, like we're all kind of taking a break because out of respect for what's going on, plus like the political climate is too chaotic to like why try to promote anything right now. It seems that's true, seems a bit vain.
But you've stayed very busy with your own solo stuff. That's a different sound to your other thing as well. It's almost quite synth based in some of the things you do, acoustic and synth based. Are you like a fan of stuff like Robin and Churches and all that kind of thing?
Oh yeah,
I get that kind of vibe from some of the stuff I've heard.
Yeah.
So is it quite nice to do all different sounds? Because you do the rock stuff and obviously your solo stuff as well. So you must like playing with all different sounds.
It's so much fun, like synthesizers. I've always loved playing with sounds. Like you have just like endless banks of really cool sounds. Like as like I got older, definitely got more into like electronic pop, like Robin, like you said, Metric. There's a ton I just can't think of right now. But I love that stuff. And so when you're in your own studio and you have like you can't really make a lot of noise, synths are the best. It's just you can get lost for hours and hours.
Yeah.
Like sometimes that makes it hard to finish stuff, but
do you do a lot of it on your own then, or do you have like a producer partner or anything like that who you work with, or are you pretty much self-contained now to record your solo stuff all
I do everything that's on like the last Noelle, like Spotify, Bandcamp, all that. Like I recorded and then produced, engineered, whatever you want to call it. There's a select like Adam mixed a few songs, and David Spring, who did Damone's Out Here All Night, he mixed the Tongue Tied EP. He mixed that. The better sounding ones in the rest of the catalog, Adam mixed those.
Right.
But other than that, I do the recording by myself.
Excellent. So how was it reuniting with Mike and Vasquez for the Damone show? That was last year right now. My kind of calendar's just all out the window on time.
Yeah.
I have no idea when anything. How was that getting back together since you guys broke up? Had you had a lot of time to reflect on things since the split? Because even though I was a big fan of Damone, I didn't really hear about any kind of split. I just figured you guys were on a bit of a down low. Then I heard about Dustin passing away in 2011. So did that kind of bring you guys back together? Time to reflect on stuff, or had you kind of reconnected over the past few years?
It was a clean break in 2008. It didn't end pretty, but yeah, we were kind of like on bad terms until Dustin passed in 2011, when we all reacquainted at his funeral in Texas.
Yeah.
And it, obviously unfortunate circumstances brought us back together, but we were super cordial. It was like, no bad vibes otherwise, but we didn't like rekindle the band at that time. It was just like, hey, good to be back in like good graces anyway.
Yeah.
And so then it was like 2 years ago. Vasquez's girlfriend is a hairdresser, and she hit me up to like do my hair, and I was like, all right, cool, whatever, free haircut. And she was like, Vasquez misses you and he still loves you, and you should like, hit him up or whatever. I'm like, okay, sure. So I hit him up and we met up, and he was like, yo, you gotta convince Woods to get that we should get this thing going and like, have a reunion show. And I was like, all right. So I hit up Woods, and he was like, nah, man, nah, I'm not gonna fuck that. Like, and I'm like, yeah, okay, yeah, whatever. And but then I was like, it was just like burning inside of me, and I was like, we have to do this. Like, so we got him on board eventually, and then all of a sudden he starts throwing tons of music at me, and like he's like, oh, I was like up all night, I wrote the song. And I'm like, in a week he had like 20 new songs. I'm like, what?
Wow. So
he had this like wave of inspiration or something. So we just got back on the horse, started recording, and then the show went off without a hitch. And then we were planning another one right as the shutdown happened. So yeah. But yeah, so it's good. We're all just like no time has passed.
No, that's cool, because there's a few new songs. Like you've just recently done the Forever Open song, put that out there and things like that. So once things kind of kick back into gear, will there be a possibility of like maybe an EP or an album later down the line, or is it just see what happens now? No pressure from anybody, just when it's ready kind of thing?
TBH, to be honest, that we have some stuff in the wing, and I'm just like, I gotta nudge Woods to be like, he's such a perfectionist, and obviously I respect that, but I'm like, yo, it's done, it's mixed, like, let's get this shit out. But everything's gotta have a plan, and I'm like, okay, fine. And sometimes I just want to throw my hands up, but it's hard to walk away when it's like, it means a lot, and yeah, I feel like it's pretty good stuff. So hopefully within the next year or so.
Sweet. I look forward to that. That's great.
Me too.
Well, I really appreciate your time speaking to me.
Oh, thank you. It was great talking to you.
Big shout to Noelle for taking the time to talk to me here on the Straight to Video podcast. The song you heard was by a band, The Organ Beats, and it was called Only Human from the EP of the same name, and you can pick that up at theorganbeatsmusic.com. And if you want to check out the horror documentary I was talking about, then that is streaming on Shudder, and it's called In Search of Darkness, a journey into iconic 80s horror. That thing is like 4 hours long, but I highly recommend it. Me, I'm just going to be waiting for all that new Damone music to land once it's ready, and hopefully we'll get some live shows next year. So, until next time, I've been your host Rob Lane, and this has been the Straight to Video podcast. Hope you've had fun, and I'll speak to you all real soon.